everybody, and welcome back. I am doing a video today that I have realized in the last week that I really need to do. So if you didn't know, for those of you who didn't tune in, I was a guest on Alan at the Library of Alexandria's Bookish Jeopardy this past weekend, which was the fulfillment of a life goal for me. So this is as close as I'll ever get to real Jeopardy, and I had so much fun. I love trivia. I am super competitive, and I just had the best time on Bookish Jeopardy. So if you didn't get a chance to watch that, it was really funny. There were a lot of really funny moments, a lot of kind of failure moments, but I had such a good time, and I will link it below if you want to check it out. One thing that came out of that episode of Bookish Jeopardy is that my science fiction knowledge, especially when contrasted with my knowledge of fantasy, is severely lacking. I have not read a lot of science fiction. I have not prioritized science fiction a lot, but I do like science fiction. When I pick it up, I enjoy it. I am always looking for things to read. It's just that I'm so pulled in by fantasy, and there's so much fantasy to read that I feel like science fiction gets pushed off to the side. I've been trying to reflect a little bit on why I'm not as quick to pick up science fiction over the last couple of days. I've been reflecting over the last couple of days. And I think there are some reasons. I think science fiction tends to be a little denser than fantasy, and I like books that I can pick up and totally get immersed in immediately. Science, hard science, and science based on astrophysics or physics in general it doesn't come naturally to me. It is one of the areas of scholarship that I don't know a ton about. And so sometimes I can end up feeling a little bit confused, and I don't like that feeling. Even though I know that I should push myself, it's not a feeling that I actively seek out. But then I do find those books really rewarding. So books like Neuromancer by William Gibson, for example, or The Three-Body Problem. I liked both of those books so much, even though I found them really tough to get through at certain parts because the science was a little bit over my head. Now, I do really try to incorporate some of physics and astrophysics into my nonfiction reading because I do want to learn more and improve my knowledge base there, but it's just not something that I gravitate toward. I find that science fiction can also be a little bit dry, and I need to be in the right mood to pick that up. So I think there are a variety of reasons why I don't go as willingly for science fiction as I do for fantasy. But I would like to be able to incorporate more of that into my TBR. And because of the part of myself that I realize is not a great strength, but I can't get rid of it, which is this very competitive nature and this need to know so many things, I was appalled at my lack of science fiction knowledge, and now I just can't abide by that. So I need to read more science fiction. But I picked out a bunch, some of which I have here because my husband really does like science fiction, and he is really knowledgeable about all of those things. So I usually do go to him for clarification or for help when I need it. But I picked some books off of his shelves, and I think one or two of them might be mine as well. And then some books that I don't have on hand, which I'm going to talk about first. So this is my science fiction TBR works of science fiction that I would like to pick up in the near future. I'm not going to give a huge amount of information about each one because I don't really know that much about each one, but I would really love it. If any of you have read these books, then please let me know what you thought about them. If you feel like they're more beginner sci-fi or advanced sci-fi, and then if you have books that I didn't mention that you think are really unmissable works of science fiction, then I would love to know it. To give one tiny last bit of context into my experience with science fiction, I feel like the most experience that I have is where science fiction meets literary fiction. So I actually quite enjoy that, and a lot of those works I have read. So if you think about sci-fi literary classics like 1984, A Brave New World, Never Let Me Go, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, all of those I have read and have really enjoyed. I have also read the Ender series, which I really like. I've read Old Man's War. So there's a couple of bigger science fiction volumes that I have read and enjoyed. And of course, science fantasy is a huge love of mine. I love Star Wars, and I'm hoping to get more into the EU this year. And Red Rising is one of my favorite series ever. So I think what I'm looking for maybe is some more modern sci-fi that is really captivating, has captured people's attention, and I just want to expand my knowledge in general. So after that kind of rambling intro, I'm going to talk about the books on this TBR and would love to know any of your thoughts. So the first 3 books are ones that I don't have on my shelf, but I've heard a lot of great things about them, so I wanted to include them here. And the first of those is A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. So I have heard a lot about this book. I believe, I don't know if it won the Hugo or if the Hugos have been announced for this year, but I believe it was shortlisted for the Hugo Award. Has been getting a lot of good buzz, and a couple of people whose reviews I follow very steadfastly on Goodreads have had nothing but good things to say about it. From what I understand, A Memory Called Empire is kind of a blend of a murder mystery. There is a woman who has been made ambassador to an empire, and she arrives to find that her predecessor has been killed, and nobody wants to talk about it. So I think she's trying to get to the bottom of this to find out if it was a murder or something sinister, or if there's totally something else going on, all while trying to navigate and adapt to this alien landscape, to these new improved forms of technology, and not get sucked into the new and exciting culture that is around her. So I have heard that this is a little bit difficult to get into initially, but then expands into this wonderful world building, that the writing is really nice, and that it is just overall a very engaging and worthwhile story. So if you have anything else to add about that book, if you really think that I should read it, then please let me know. I would love to hear anybody's thoughts on that. The second book that I have written down here is The Martian by Andy Weir. So I may be one of the last people on earth to read this book. I have also not seen the movie, but so many people have talked about how fun this book is. I believe the setup is very simple. It is a man who has been left on Mars and needs to try to survive or find his way off. So I guess it's a bit of a survival science fiction. I have heard that there is some scientific validity to the story. If this is wrong, then please correct me in the comments. But I believe Andy Weir is an engineer of some sort, and the main character in the book is also an engineer. And I really like that. I like when people can bring their expertise to a book. A science fiction book that I did read a couple of years ago that I've talked about a little bit on the channel is Robopocalypse, which is as ridiculous as it sounds, but is so much fun. And the author is actually an engineer who works in AI. And so I think a lot of what made the book so enjoyable was thinking about how he puzzled out that plot and how his own real world experience weighed in when he was writing it. So I'm hoping to get a little bit of that same experience from The Martian. Everybody says that this is really quick, really immersive, that the main character is really funny. So I expect that this is one that I'll be able to pick up and read in a sitting or two, and maybe use it to break up some of the longer, tougher books that I have on my TBR. The last book on my TBR of books that I don't own myself is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. So this is another classic work of sci-fi that I have not read, and actually my husband hasn't read it either, so I'm wondering if maybe we can read this one together. I know very little about this book. I believe that there is a set of pilgrims who go out onto a voyage to the planet of Hyperion, and on the planet of the Hyperion resides this legendary figure known as the Shrike. Literally, that is all that I know about this book. But again, one of my friends from work, whose reviews I follow so diligently on Goodreads because he is such an excellent reviewer and he has such great insights. I will link I don't know how to link people's Goodreads. I will see if I can link his Goodreads down below. His name is Matthew, and he has such insightful things to say. He reads a lot of literary fiction, but does cross over to sci-fi and fantasy sometimes, but he is one of my favorite people to follow on Goodreads, and he had a lot of really wonderful things to say about Hyperion when he read it either earlier this year or late last year. And so I really, really want to get to that, and I am very much looking forward to it. However, we're going to segue into the books that I have at home, most of which are my husband's, but a couple of which are mine, and talk about why I am looking forward to reading those. So the first one is To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. So this is a very short little novella. Becky Chambers writes very character-focused, kind of soft and cozy sci-fi almost. So my husband really, really loves Becky Chambers. He has read all of her books that are out so far. I have only read one of them. So I have read A Closed in Comet Orbit, which is the second of her Wayfarers series, and that was my husband's favorite one. So that is the one that I read, and I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't go back and read the others because, again, I didn't have this kind of compulsion to go and finish the rest of the series, but I really enjoyed my time with that one. To Be Taught If Fortunate is about, I think it's about a crew or perhaps just one person named Ariadne who has gone out on an exploration mission and is kind of transmitting their message back to Earth about what they found. I believe. This could be totally wrong, but this is what I think it is about. But mostly, it's very short. I enjoyed Becky Chambers' writing style in the past. I really like character-focused and character-driven stories. So I think that this will be a nice kind of soothing sci-fi that is not too intimidating for me as I begin my journey through that genre a little bit more. The next is a book that I have talked about a lot and I am 100% reading this year because I want to get to it before the movie comes out, and that is Frank Herbert's Dune. This is a book that has a lot of love. It gets a lot of love on BookTube. My husband did not love it. He did not love Dune in the way that so many people do, but our tastes for literary fiction don't tend to line up very well. My husband really is a action-focused reader. He likes a lot of action in his plots, and some kind of more dense, dry writing cannot be for him sometimes. So I don't necessarily think that I won't enjoy it just because he didn't, but I know that I'm going to read Dune this year because I really, really want to read it before the movie comes out. When I made a list at the beginning of the year of the 21 books that I want to read in 2021, Dune was on that list, and I will 100% be reading it. I honestly don't know a whole lot about what Dune is about either. Based on some of the comments that I've gotten on the channel, people have told me that it is definitely more science fantasy than pure science fiction. I know that there is a hero's journey, that there's a young man who we follow throughout this book who does go on, some sort of journey or some sort of transition in his life. And I know that the phrase fear is the mind killer. So basically, if you take those little chunks of things, then you have all of my previous knowledge about Dune. But I am really looking forward to reading it. This has been on the TBR for years and years and years, probably decades. I have wanted to read it for so long and I have been so intimidated. But I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. Probably in the early fall is when I assume I'm going to be reading Dune, but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping to do a full review, who knows, maybe even a reading vlog for Dune, because I feel like I will have a lot of things to discuss, and it's a book that I think a lot of people have already read. So that's that one. The next is a little bit of a newer novel, and this is an author that I have been hearing a lot of good things about. So this is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this is also my husband's book, but I don't think he has read this one yet. I bought this for him for Christmas last year, and I don't think he has gotten around to it. What I know, sorry, there's a dog hair sticking out of there. What I know about this book is that there are multiple colonized planets and there are space alien spiders. So that is the gist of what I know about Children of Time. But overall, I have heard about Adrian Tchaikovsky. I've heard that his books are very compelling, that he writes these shades of morality. I've heard in particular in this book, you're not really sure whose side you're supposed to be on. I am not scared of spiders or other bugs, so that part of it won't freak me out, but I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard that this is really, really good. I've heard some mixed things about the second book, which I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a duology or if there are even more that are going to be coming out. But if you have read Children of Time and you feel like I should bump it to the top of the list, if this is a really accessible work of sci-fi, if you think that I will like it based on the other things that I have said I'd liked, then I would really like to know. This video is basically me asking people for their expertise because I have none in this area. But that is Children of Time. The next is more of the literary sci-fi, and that is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. So, shame of all shames, I have not read any books by Octavia E. Butler, which I would really love to remedy. And I have heard that this is a good place to start. Again, I think this toes the line more between literary fiction and science fiction, which is a place that I really like to be. I love literary fiction, and when the two meld together, I really enjoy that. So I think that I will really like this. Again, I don't know a whole lot about the plot here. On the back, it says that the main character suffers from hyperempathy, which is a debilitating sensitivity to others' emotions. So there is that kind of science fiction-y / fantasy hook there. But I think that Octavia E. Butler explores a number of themes that kind of go beyond the typical range of what you see in science fiction. I don't really want to comment a whole lot on that until I have read it for myself, but I've heard from other people who have read this that it is very immersive, that it is very quick to get through, and that it will leave a big impact on you. I definitely moved away. I think this is a bit of a dystopian work, and I definitely moved away from those types of novels about 10 years ago, probably, because the market was totally inundated with them. And I recognize that this was probably a precursor to many of those other works because it was in fact published much before them. But I did get a little bit burnt out on that genre, but I think that I am ready to dive back in. I am really looking forward to that read, and I hope that I really, really love it. Second to last that I have here is a book I've talked about, I think, in one of my previous videos, and that is Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. So I think I talked about this book in terms of my TBR of shame, or books that have been sitting on my TBR for so long, because I have owned this book for many, many, many years. I think I first picked it up because I read that Patrick Rothfuss had put it on one of the books, like a list of books that had inspired him when he was writing his fantasy series. And I thought, okay, well, that must mean that it's pretty good because he's such a good writer. And I picked it up and it sat there forever. I don't know a whole lot about it. I believe it's more of like a cyberpunk, like techie sort of science fiction. I don't even know what I'm basing that on, except for maybe the cover. But I have heard good things about this. I think Neal Stephenson is one of those polarizing authors. People either really love it or think that it is just like too out there for them. But it looks like it's not too long. The print is fairly big in the copy that I have. So I don't think, unless this is incredibly dense, that it will be too hard to get through. This is a bit of an older work, so if anybody has read this, if they've enjoyed it, please let me know. I'm going to read it either way, but I would really like to have some perspective from people. You know, what did you enjoy about it? Why did you not like it? So if anybody has any experience with this book, then please let me know. And then the final work of science fiction is a new book, and this is one that I was given as a gift by my very good friend Laura this past year for my birthday, and that is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. So Laura knows that I really enjoyed the Inheritance cycle when I was in my teenage years. I talked about this in a previous video too. I think Inheritance is a little bit divisive on book 2, but for what it is, I really like it. They're my youngest sister's, some of her favorite books of all time. I have a lot of really good memories associated with that. I've heard some mixed things about To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, but if it is like the Inheritance cycle, Christopher Paolini's writing style is pretty accessible, pretty easy to get through. So unless there's something that I absolutely hate in here, I can't see that it's going to take me a super long time to get through this one. And I would like to see how his writing has changed. I did read his follow-up to the Inheritance trilogy, which was like a little novella called, I don't know, The Fork and the Worm and the something. I don't even remember. I'll pop it up on the screen. And I hadn't seen a whole lot of change in his writing style, but this is a totally new genre. It's been a long time since he published a full-length work, I think that Christopher Paolini is delightfully nerdy. I really enjoy watching him in interviews, and he seems like a really cool person. So I am looking forward to reading this, and I hope that it is one that I will enjoy. However, that is the kind of rudimentary beginnings of my foray into science fiction. Again, if you have any works of science fiction, especially more modern works of science fiction that you really love, that you feel are good jumping off points for people who don't have a lot of experience in the genre, maybe even some that blend or kind of toe the line between science fiction and fantasy, then I would really love to hear your recommendations. This is definitely a video where I am reaching out to you, asking for your help, and I would really love to kind of broaden my horizons in this genre. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I feel like there wasn't a lot of me giving to you at this time, but hopefully it was still enjoyable either way, and I will see you with another video soon. Bye.